Dear students, in this chapter of improvement in food resources, we are going to study the continuity of the chapter that you have studied in Standard 8 called Crop Production. In Standard 8 in Crop Production, you were taught about the various agricultural tasks that the farmer uses for production of crops or agriculture. You have studied those, plowing, leveling, irrigation, sowing, using fertilizers, and then when the plants grow, the crops become mature, the harvesting and all those processes we have studied already. In this chapter 9, we are talking not about food resources, we are talking about improvement in food resources. Means we are talking about increasing the production. But as the discussion nowadays, you can increase the production, but that is causing a lot of soil pollution, environmental problems. So as we use the term even in natural resources chapter about sustainable development. So sustainable agriculture is the new term that we are going to study in this chapter, which is just a refinement or slight changes that we bring about in the total process of crop production. So all those steps we will be studying one by one. What are the improvements that we need to bring about? So here we are actually talking about the process of sustainable agriculture. A very common term nowadays, very frequently used, is also called as organic farming. The concern is the protection of the environment and along with the increase in production. So that was a challenge to the scientists, and they have come out with a few processes. It is done in 3 basic steps that we need to know about. What is done actually, first one, we talk about 3 major steps that is followed in sustainable agriculture, and all are based on thorough research work. It is called as crop production management. We will study the whole process in these 3 headings. The second one is called as the crop protection management. And of course the third one is called as the crop variety improvement. It is not that we do it one by one serially. First we must do crop production. It goes simultaneously together. These are the 3 major steps that we follow for increasing the production without damaging our environment. Protection of environment is the major concern here. So that the production is increased, we should have buffer stocks for future generation, plus we should not damage the climatic and the environmental conditions for the future generation. What does these 3 steps mean? The first is crop production manual, to discuss one by one. The increase in production. Now the basic processes are same, the plowing, leveling. Plowing is done, leveling is done, but few steps which were the earlier steps taken by the farmers are replaced by the recent steps that we should do. The earlier steps are replaced by recent steps. What the farmers used to do earlier and what are the changes we need to bring about. The first thing was the major use of fertilizers should be replaced by the use of manures. The second is the use of insecticide and pesticides, the chemicals we'll talk about. It is replaced by herbicides or some natural ingredients. And the third major was replacing the basic method of monoculture by lot of other improved technologies like what is is called as mixed cropping or multiple cropping, and then intercropping, and of course the process of crop rotation. So these are the changes. You have already studied in your junior classes what is the basic difference between fertilizer and manures. Fertilizers are non-biodegradable substances generally used to increase the production of the crops in the field, but they are non-biodegradable. They should not be used because they make the soil acidic or basic. So they should be replaced by the organic compounds called as manures, because they do not damage the condition of the soil, the nature of the soil, plus they are hygroscopic, they retain the water more, they mix with the soil, and they are the major supplier of all the micro and macronutrients. You might have studied in your junior classes there are 13 nutrients which are essentially required by the plants for better growth, and all these 13 nutrients are present in manures. Fertilizers are very specific. There are nitrogenous fertilizer, phosphate fertilizer, zinc fertilizers. They supply one particular nutrient. So they are emergency use products because they can be used only in certain conditions, but their use should be avoided because they are nutrient specific. They don't have the majority of nutrients. They are non-biodegradable, causes pollution. Of course, they are extensively used because they are faster in action. So a lot of differences you already know. The manures must be used because they are organic. They are not inorganic like fertilizers. So they become a part of the soil. They increase the humus content. Plus they retain water. Their water retaining capacity is also more. The insecticides and pesticides, which are chemicals that are used, they not only harm the condition of the soil, causes soil pollution, but also creates a lot of health problem to human beings, because a lot of insecticides and pesticides gets absorbed in the grains, in the fruits, in the vegetables, and they ultimately cause problem to human health. So they should be replaced by, the people say that it is garlic juice or neem extracts. Such things, or certain herbicides are used which have strong smell and bad taste. So they also drive away the insects and pests. So that can be replaced there. The major factor is the monoculture, which is replaced by mixed cropping, intercropping, and crop rotation. What is mixed cropping? Mixed cropping is the growing or culturing, more than one crop at a time in the same field in a season. In any particular season, we need to, make a proper planning. What are the different crops that can grow together, and a mixture of these crops are grown. What actually happens, let me tell you. In what way it is beneficial? Beneficial in the sense that there are different types of insects which become habituated of living on a particular kind of crops. Now try to listen carefully. The insects have a particular life cycle rather, that they lay eggs, the eggs hatch into caterpillar larva, and the caterpillar metamorphoses into the adult. Now that is their life cycle. There is a particular season in which they lay eggs. The caterpillar have softer mouth parts. They cannot chew or eat the harder parts of the plant. So generally, the insects try to lay eggs only on those plants in which the hatching out of caterpillar matches with the production of new parts like new leaves, flowers. If those things match up, then the chances of survival of caterpillar is more, because they will get the softer food there. So they don't lay eggs everywhere in all the plants. They search for or select such a crop on which if they lay eggs, the caterpillar will hatch out from the egg, and at that time the caterpillar will get the softer parts. So food should be available, first thing. Second is, the time of maturity of caterpillar into adult, and the adults have a particular body shape and size and color. So the adult selects such a plant in which, have you heard about the term mimicry? Mimicry in the sense or camouflage. So that they can hide into the leaves or the flower colors should match with their body color or the branch shape is such that the insects hide there and the predators are not able to locate them. So all the insects are not found in all the plants. The insects select such a plant or a crop in which they can hide, they can merge with the background so that they are not located by the predators first. And second, when they lay eggs, the caterpillar, when they hatch out from the eggs, they should get the softer parts. So if these two conditions satisfy with a particular kind of crop, the insects select that crop to spend their life there. So if you are doing monoculture, a particular kind of crop is there in your field and an insect comes whose these two basic need matches with your crop. So these insects will stay in your field because they can hide from the predators and their young ones will get the food also. So they will stay there for a longer period of time, they will lay eggs, their population will increase, and because this particular kind of crop is their liking, so they eat that. And because of the increase in number of the insects, damage is increased. But if you have mixed cropping, 2 or 3 types of crops, the insects do not move in a line to eat the crops. They jump from one plant to another plant, like this, they move around. And if they find a mixture of crops, means they get the feeling that they are not able to hide on every plant. The regular supply of that plant is not there. Plus, they understand that their caterpillar may not survive here because there are different kinds of crops and all the crops they are not able to hide. So they leave the field immediately. Means before they lay eggs, they leave the field so their population does not rise. So damage to our crops is less. So it is a very good process of confuses the insects or the pests. I hope you have understood confusion to the insects because the insects like a regular supply of that crop on which they can hide properly, camouflage themselves to protect from the enemies, and when they lay eggs, the caterpillar come out, they get the softer parts. Is that clear? If that regular supply is not there, they don't spend their time in the field, they leave the field earlier. So if the insects leave the field, the damage to the crop is less. But the major problem with mixed cropping was that the farmers started it when they thought of the advantages. So they mixed the seeds and threw in the field in a very random and haphazard manner. The problems they got is during the process of irrigation and during harvesting. There are 3 or 4 types of crops and all the crops do not have similar demand of water. Plus they don't mature at the same time. So now whatever crops are maturing here and there, they have to search for the plant and they have to go for harvesting, leaving other crops. That was a confusing state. And while irrigation, which plant needs water and the adjacent plant does not need water. So there was a big problem during the mixed cropping. So mixed cropping was converted into a step called intercropping. Intercropping is also a method of mixed cropping. But different crops were grown in different rows or columns. I mean to say, you will understand this. In mixed cropping, if you are growing 3 crops, the 3 crops are there anywhere, a random mixture, A, B, C here. So that was a confusing state. But what they did now, they are doing that mixed cropping, means in a crop, in a field, they are growing 3 types of crops, but in a continuous row, like this. So as I told you, the insects do not move in a line, they jump from one plant to another plant. So they definitely understand that there is the regular supply of the same crop is not there. So they still get confused. But during irrigation or during harvesting, the problem gets solved. So intercropping is actually an advanced method of mixed cropping. So these ideas were given to the farmers that do that so that the the population of insect does not rise and the better yield of crop can be obtained. Crop rotation is another method where we change the crop every season. If you are growing a crop this season and harvest it, in the next season you grow a second type of crop. In the third season grow a third type of crop. So like that what happens again, the insects and their larvae, whatever are there, they get a different kind of crops. So that change also helps, plus the nutrient demand. The plants, the crops, they absorb the nutrition from the soil. So different plants have different nutrient demands. If the first crop has removed certain nutrients, you are growing a second type of crop, it needs a different nutrient content, so it might get there. The nutrient content does not get exhausted because if the same crop is grown every time, the nutrient demand of all the crops are same, which the first season has already removed. The second season may not get that nutrient content in the field. So changing the crop every season is again a best method of agriculture, that is called as crop rotation. So these were the techniques. The last one, the basic method of irrigation, which was used in crop production by drainage irrigation or pipe irrigation. The water pumps were connected to the pipes and the other end of the pipe was in the field. When you start the water supply through the pipes or through the drains, the water used to go to your fields. But nowadays it is replaced by, you have heard about this, it is called sprinkler irrigation or drip irrigation. Sprinkler and drip irrigation are moderate supply of water as much as the demand of the crop. It is not that pouring liters and liters of water in the soil. The plant do not need that much water at the same time. There may be water logging, that is also harmful for the plant. Plus, the majority, 50% of water gets evaporated during this when the sun comes out. So that is a wastage of water. So even water harvesting, storage of water is also a major concern. So therefore irrigation has been replaced. The drainage and pipe, the conventional way which the farmers used to do, are replaced by sprinkler and drip irrigation, which provides moderate amount of water every time. The water content of the soil is maintained, plus water logging is avoided. So these were the major changes which are needed, which was done earlier and has to be replaced in the recent steps, what is talked about as crop production management. The second major step, that is, I hope you have understood that, we'll go to the second step called crop protection management. Now, what are the things from which the crop needs to be protected? The crops needs to be protected, once again we are coming to the same thing, from two things. The protection is needed in the crops from two things, it is called the weeds and the pests. Weeds are the unwanted plants. Weeds are the unwanted plants that grow along with our crops, and they naturally grow, and they damage our crops too much because there is a competition between our crops which we want with these unwanted plants, because they take a lot of sunlight, their leaves are broader, they use a lot of sunlight, they use spaces, plus they draw a lot of nutrition from the soil. Whatever manures you have used is consumed by the weeds. So our crops get less supply of, they get less space to grow, they get less supply of nutrients. When you irrigate, water is also captured by the weeds. So there is a competition and therefore the production decreases. So we need to control them. Earlier, we used chemicals called weedicides. But nowadays it is said that we should either, mechanical control is very non-practical. They say that you go to the field and pluck out all the weeds and throw it. On a smaller scale of field, it is easier to be done. But on a larger scale, when the field is few hectares, it is just impossible to move around and keep plucking the weeds. So that is not practical. chemical use is said to be avoided. So better is the biological control. What is biological control of its? Just now we have discussed that different types of insects select different types of plants or crops for their maintaining their life cycle. अभी बात की हम लोगों ने क्या कहे थे इसमें कि the insects they search such a crop or plant where they can hide themselves according to the shape of leaf, shape of flower, color of flower, to camouflage, to hide themselves from the bigger enemies. And second, they lay eggs at such a period of time when in that crop the flowers and the birds come out, which are easy food for the caterpillars. So survival of young ones is also easier. So insects select those plants. So weeds are also plants. We need to find out certain insects which spend their life cycle on that weed. The weed is their food. And if you do certain amount of research work and find out such a insect, and we can use those insects. The insects are living organisms. Eating of the crop is a part of food chain natural process, does not cause any pollution. I'll give you one example, that there is an insect called Cochineal Insect. It is known to feeds on a weed, generally grows much more in Madhya Pradesh, in Rajasthan. Opuntia is a weed. And cochineal insect is such an insect, it selects the shape of the body size, the color matches with this plant, which is a weed, mind you. And if you culture cochineal insect in your background of your house, in your compost pit, and when the opuntia comes out, you go and throw this cochineal insect in the field. These insects will search for the opuntia and settle there. They eat up the leaves, the branch, the stem, and even the roots of opuntia as their food, and within no time you will find that these insects have removed opuntia from the field without using any chemical, without doing any mechanical labor. The weed is removed. So that is called as biological control, where a living organism is taking care of other living organism. So such methods should be used nowadays for the removal of the weeds. There are pests also, insects. So we need to search for, to control pests. Pests आप जानते हो? Pests are nothing but insects which damage our crops, So how to control them? Once again the biological control comes into picture. You need to find out certain carnivorous insects which eats on the pests. बहुत सिंपल सा एग्जाम्पल है जो आंध्र प्रदेश में इट इज ऑलरेडी इन यूज. What happens there, they culture rice along with the carnivorous species. Carnivorous species like, I'll give you one example, gambusia or minnows or trouts. These are some varieties of fishes that are cultured in the rice field. Rice needs a lot of water. So in the rice field, we keep water logging condition. Water is allowed to stay there with long boundaries. Boundaries are built up to a height, and we pour a lot of water, and we culture fish also there. Now the pests which come and settle on the rice crops. The pests or the insects have a tendency of laying eggs in water. So when the insects attack the rice field, okay, they are there, adults, but they are to stop the increase in their population. When they lay eggs in the water, these fishes which are there already in the field, in the water, they eat up the larvae of these insects, of the pests. They are larvivorous fishes. So insects are there, they lay the eggs. When the eggs hatch into larvae, these fish eat the larvae. So you don't have to give food to the fish also. The fishes are getting natural food. They also grow very well. So no expenditure in culturing the fishes. Second, the population of the insects is already checked, because the young ones are just not coming. Those few adults which are there in the field, they are there. the young ones which hatch out are killed by the fish. So automatically, and when the fish release the waste materials after eating these insects, these waste dissolve in water, goes to the soil and act as manure for the rice crop also. So you can see this kind of sustainable agriculture should be practiced, where neither you have to use any manure or fertilizer for the rice crops, nor you have to give any food to the fish, and both of them culturable, and the farmer is getting double production. He is able to produce rice also, he is able to sell the fish also in the market. So such practices should be encouraged for the reduction in the use of chemicals that we used to do once upon a time in the form of weedicides and pesticides. So these are the latest technologies given to the farmers for crop protection management. The third one, of course, which can be done earlier also, is improving the variety of the crops. Improving the variety of the crops in the sense it is done by the third one. It is done by a method of hybridization. In this, we select two better varieties of crops and do artificial pollination. You might have studied in a very basic way the process of sexual reproduction में होता क्या है कि two organisms are there, male and female. They pass their gametes. In plants we talk about pollen grains after pollination falling on a flower and fertilized with the egg. So pollen grains brings, if I am having one plant here, this is also a selected better quality of plant, and from here we take the pollen grains and artificially drop it on the stigma of other plant, which is also a selected plant, and we allow the process of fertilization. So during the fertilization of the egg of this plant with the pollen grain of that plant, we produce a zygote which has now received what? It has received the genes from two better variety of plants. Is it not? We have selected this plant according to its better varieties. Suppose it has three good qualities, and the other plant on which we are dropping it also has three good qualities. So when these three good qualities and these three qualities with the genes of pollen grains and the genes of egg fertilize, in this new zygote we have got these six good qualities together, because the genes mix together and the qualities are produced in the next generation. Such a group of plant is called as HYV, or also called as high yielding variety of crops. So a lot of research works are going on in various institutes. In Bihar also we have an institute where we have heard about the Pusa agricultural farms, and the scientists there are continuously doing these processes or methods to develop HYV varieties, and the farmers are advised to use HYV seeds in their agricultural process. So if the farmers have this sense of collecting the high-yielding varieties of seeds which already have better qualities in the field, and in the field when they go using these high-yielding varieties, they should do what? Intercropping or mixed cropping method, so confusing the insects, and then whatever insects comes or the weeds come, we control them biologically. So what is there? We are just not using any chemicals. So if the farmers know all these three basic steps and they combine it well, by crop variety improvement method, collect the high-yielding variety. This is not to be done by the farmers. It is already done by the scientists. The farmers need to collect not the local seeds that is available to them. They should collect high-yielding varieties of seeds, go to the field. Plowing, leveling is no problem, do that. But do mixed cropping, intercropping. Many grown together. So that will confuse the insects. The insects will not stay for a longer period of time in your field and they will drive away from there. So the damage caused to the crop is reduced. Whatever insects are there or weeds grow there, we need to control them biologically as we have discussed. The example of crop protection management. So if these three steps are combined together, then it is bound to produce more crops without any cause of pollution or damage to the field or the production of the crops that you do in the field. So that is about improvement in plant food resources. How can we improve the quality of plant food in the field? In the next two videos, I will talk about the improvement in animal food resources.